We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast, your daily real estate investment podcast and channel. We are happy to have you here today. Today, I am here with Megan Flake, and she is in Austin, Texas. Megan, how are you today?
Hi, Casey. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Wonderful, doing wonderful. I tell you what, we're all more blessed than we probably deserve and should be. So, nevertheless, everything's in good shape. So, listen, we want to talk to you today. I know you had said previously that you have been in the real estate investing business or game or whatever some people want to call it for, say, 15 years. Is that right?
14 years. Yep. I
14 years.
started in 2007. So my first deal was before the market correction in 2008, 2009.
So
So
isn't that
yeah,
kind of minimalizing it a little bit? Market correction.
market correction. Yep. Yep.
I think that was that was when I started too, and woo boy, I tell you what, it was it was some interesting games. So tell us about your first deal. How did you? What were you thinking? What were you doing? How were the butterflies in your stomach? What was your first deal that you did that really like kind of gave you the shot in the arm to say, "Oh man, I really like this."
Yeah, my first deal was in Florida, and I knew I wanted to get into real estate investing,
Yeah.
and so I did my homework and I found the right program, um, and I started house hacking before it was called house hacking. We have a great term for it now. I mean,
Yep.
isn't it great when people come up with like this really cute term, and you're like, you don't have to explain like I bought a house and I
It's like
had two
immediately
roommates
everybody
in
knows.
the
Yep.
house. So I lined up my tenants slash roommates to pay for my mortgage before I had even closed, and they paid for it, and I was cash flowing
I mean,
and
there
living in
you
the house.
go. My
Yeah,
gosh. And that was in Florida. Whereabouts in Florida was that?
Pensacola, Florida.
Oh, tough area to live.
Oh, yeah. I
Sunshine and
mean,
beaches.
those sugar beaches are just killer.
I tell you, do you still own that property?
I do still own that property.
Oh,
I sure do.
15 years, 14 years later, and you still have it, and it's a duplex in Pensacola, Florida. Well, I tell you what, and I'm sure in that amount of time, it's probably paid for itself, maybe even more than once. I mean, if you were paying the mortgage with your tenant, if you were paying the full mortgage with one tenant, and you were living there, or most of the first mortgage, then I mean, I'm sure once you doubled it up, it just really moved on up.
It did okay. When I moved out of that house, I met my husband, and he was doing the same thing. He was also house hacking. He had his net worth in a spreadsheet, and he had Rich Dad Poor Dad on the bookshelf. So um, we combined
Yeah,
households and
sure.
had one that was a dedicated rental and the other one was a rental. And in 2009, we saw the direction that it was going and that real estate was going. And we're like, well, let's double down and take the risk and buy a foreclosure. So
Yep. Yep.
by the end of 2009, we had like three properties that had mortgages because the market hadn't finished bottoming out for
Sure.
Pensacola yet.
Sure.
So we had three mortgages underwater in one city, and it was wild. Every time a hurricane came through that city, I was like, "Man, am I also physically going to be underwater too?"
No doubt. My gosh. Well, I tell you what, and a lot of people, this way this market is right now, and everything is I always called it the attitude is there's never going to be another bad day. When in fact, we all know that those of us that came through '09, 2010, 2011, and my listeners have heard me talk about it many times, especially with the military presence here close to where we are. You had just strings and rows of houses that were just, weeds 2 feet tall, and it just complete and utter. It was just disparaging to sit and watch that whole thing play out. And when you start talking about things that were underwater, and people, and the kids, or I call them kids, the people that have matured since, like, say, 2013 to 2022, if they were say 13 years old, they're 22 now, so they don't really necessarily remember that.
They do
And
pain.
you know, you were like myself when you're sitting there staring at an investment, and you're going, all right, what are we going to do here? How are we going to make this not be a bad deal? And those of that hung on, I mean, I mean, I don't know what it's worth today. So it was underwater in 2009. What is it worth today versus what it was worth in 2009?
It has almost doubled.
So, I mean, look at that. And so it was now let me back up. Was it the duplex was a foreclosure?
It wasn't a duplex, it was a house. So I
Okay.
was using my first time home buyer program with the city. I was using a first time
Gotcha.
home buyer bond to secure our interest rate secured by a bond with the county because I was first time home
Sure.
buyer. So I got a
Uh-huh.
lower interest rate as well. And, the city had a great program where they paid for a portion of your down payment. And um, so I walked into it with very, very little money
Yeah.
down. I had
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
$1,000 that I was responsible for, and it was great. I mean, I
Yeah.
was happy. I was getting my mortgage paid.
Yes, I mean, and then how do you, I mean, it's unbelievable to me that people don't, if you can try to figure this stuff out, just even a minute way of figuring it out. It doesn't have to be a full duplex. Like, I mean, again, you said you house hacked. You didn't duplex hack, you house hacked. So, all right, so tell us a little bit about, so now everything, you're married and things are kind of shifting in a different direction. And of course, you were working just a steady, regular, everyday job, right?
I sure was. Absolutely. Yep. So
And
I transitioned into working at GE at some point, and um, I was a buyer for them. I did logistics for them. So buying was fun. I mean, I really love doing the expensive things. Like, seriously, put me turn me loose in like a flea
sure,
market, and I will really shine because I really enjoy haggling, basically. So being
yeah,
a buyer for GE was great for me because it was hundreds of millions of dollars to play with.
sure, yeah, and then you're saving a penny here and a penny there too along the way, I'm sure. So
Absolutely, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
So
you turned that into, now you're making a steady income, and are you investing your principal money that you make, or are you investing your 401k, or so you now you kind of start transitioning and saying, okay, hey, I'm working this career, but I also want to grow my investment business.
most of the houses, so after we got married, most of the houses that we bought wound up being primary residence because we wound up moving every roughly 2 years with
So
GE.
you're getting primary residence loans as you move
And
around.
well, we like to call GE the general. So,
Yeah.
and the general also paid for our moving expenses. So
Wow.
mhm. Sometimes
Wow.
both of us too. So it worked out really well.
Sure.
So we were a little different about what neighborhoods we were looking to move into and how we chose houses because we wanted something that when we moved out would make a great rental. So we
Sure.
continued to
Sure.
house hack, but in a different way.
Yeah, and you don't, because you don't want to go buy $1 million home that logically or on paper something you can afford, because then you come in and you're like, okay, now I need to rent this $1 million home, and you've got a really thin market at the top that's looking for a rental of that to that degree.
Mhm.
So it makes perfect sense. So how many doors do you own right now?
Right now we own 13 and a land lease that has a billboard on it.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, just a little, that's, and I'll tell you, a lot of people don't realize what those billboards pay. Billboards pay like cell phone antennas. That's everyday money. That's money just for,
My
what's
favorite
that?
my favorite part about that billboard is there are no 2 a.m. calls about a leaking toilet ever.
Yes, there's no plunging to do. There's no light bulbs to change. There's no nothing. Maybe a little electric bill, or I don't even know. Maybe they even pay the electric bill. But the people, like I said, cell phone towers and billboards are, whew, man, they're where it's at. I mean, really, if you're looking at just truly passive, forget about it. Pick up the mailbox money checks. The billboards and stuff are the way to go. So you've transitioned, and so you've got 13 doors, and how many states? Three.
3 different states.
And what
Yes.
states are those?
We are in South Carolina, Florida, and Texas.
Wow.
So I really like South Carolina and Florida because they cash flow really well. I'm currently a real estate agent. I deal primarily with investors like myself because after
Mhm.
14 years of experience in investing, I like to help people not make the same mistakes that I did. So
Absolutely.
um, I assimilate it to this. I've got my cash flow markets, which are like my dividend paying stocks,
Hmm.
and then I have my appreciating market, which are like my quick growing tech stocks that appreciate really quickly but don't necessarily pay out dividends. So
Sure.
every 3 to 4 years, I can do a cash out refi in one of my appreciating properties in Texas.
Yep.
I can take out 40, $50,000 and go. That's a down payment for another $200,000 house in South Carolina that'll cash flow $500 to $700 a month. So in a way, I get to be my own bank.
Man, and then yeah, see, and that's what we talk about, and that's what where we go so far with like making people aware that this is available. I mean, this is just and look, you really haven't done much of anything except move around. Now, do you have property managers in each area? I assume different property managers.
We do, yes. So I stopped working with GE for a while after I had kids, and I managed our rental properties. And so I have been the landlady, and I highly encourage people to manage your own property, the first one, for a year at least. I mean, really understand what you're looking for because when you have been in that position, I think it makes you much smarter when it comes to hiring those property managers. It's an invaluable experience.
Sure.
And if you're looking to hustle and get that sweat equity, I mean, it's a great way to save in expenses. But managing your own rental property, I think is I highly recommend at least the first one for the first year.
Yeah.
And but
It's
now
going to
I do
save
have.
you. It's going to save you if you only have one. There's the likelihood of you getting a discounted management rate at the management company is likely not. So it's most of the time going to be 10%
Mhm.
of the gross rent. You might get an 8% if you shop around, but then again, it kind of comes back to you get what you pay for. But um, so yeah, but if you only have one, two, three, four, it could potentially pay out to do that as long as somebody calls you and says, "Hey, we need somebody to come fix the heat and air unit." You just pick up the phone, call a local heat and air company, and then go from there. What do you do? What did you do there? Just have a list of people you knew to call.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I
Man,
had
that's
I had the
great.
big ones in the cities that I was in, and then when I didn't find someone, I had the real estate agent that I bought the property with. If
Sure.
I couldn't find it and it was something more obscure, it came to I don't have any properties that have a septic tank on them, but
Yeah.
I don't know a septic company in every city.
Yeah.
However, when I have like a really great ally and a real estate agent, I can go back and ask like their secretaries or admin assistant and say, hey, do you have any names for me? And
Sure. Sure.
oftentimes that's it. Having that professional that has those resources and has that available to you is just everything. I mean, it's been very helpful when I was self managing.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, the resources. A lot of times, people forget that they look at the capital expense of the house, they look at the capital expense of even the interest expense or whatever. But they always forget that when you're moving to a town and you have a real estate agent, that real estate agent is almost like their connection to every trade that there is that you might possibly need because they use them or they refer them or they know which ones are good and which ones are not, and so on and so forth. So what is a couple, maybe one, maybe two different things that now, did you interview property managers in the area when you finally decided to go that route? And if so, what were a couple of different questions that you really, really wanted to see where they stood at?
Absolutely. So I do a couple of different things. I give a scenario
Okay.
because I have a mentor who owns several rental properties,
Hmm.
and this happened to her. So I give them a scenario, and I'm like, what do you do when someone's looking to move in with pets? What do you do when someone is looking to move out with pets? And
Yep.
how does that change your lease? And if they don't quite give me a clear enough answer and I get something vague, like, well, what do you want to do? I go through scenario play. I'm like, well, let's say a family just moved out of the house and they moved out with their dogs and a new family's moving in and those new tenants call you on day two and they're like, my baby's been crawling on the floor and is eaten up with fleas. I mean, covered in fleas because the baby's crawling and there's fleas in the carpet.
Mm, yep.
What
Bomb
do you
it.
Right,
Yep.
exactly. So I go into like more specific role playing if I can't quite get the question that I want answered. I
Sure,
do want to
sure.
know exactly how quick and dynamic they are, and um, how much they're going to pull me in.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, I really wanted to be pulled in, and especially when I have a new property manager and a new territory that I'm expanding to, I do want to see what's going on for that first year. And then after that, I want to have the trust that take care
Well,
of
you
it.
want them to lead with the value of you knowing that they know what they're talking about. I mean, and especially in different markets because when you're in a market that changes so wildly like Florida, you might be asking $1,000 a month for rent this month, and then when if they're on a month to month term, and then all of a sudden that rent value could double like in 90 days. I mean, and now obviously it could come down that quick as well, but you really want somebody that knows the market that can tell you and advise you, say, hey, I think this we need to go up on this or whatever. And although it's not very fun for the tenant at times, and it's just unfortunately part of renting is you're ultimately open to that possibility.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. But so you go through a little role playing with the tenants, and see, we do the same. So 3,000 Capital, we're what's called a fund of funds, and so what we do the same type of scenario, but with managers of the multifamily properties that we look to invest in, and so you want to make sure it's basically the same scenario where you're like, okay, what do you do when you start having vacancies? Because like I said, I've said many times on this show that there was a time back in those years we were talking about where you saw multifamily property, multifamily property, multifamily property, and they had big signs draped over the side that said sign a 1 year lease and get a free LCD or plasma screen TV or whatever. And there were those times as well. So essentially what you have to do is continue to make your rent match your market. And nobody wants, the tenants never want the upside, but if you went to them and said, hey man, we're going to lower your rent by $200 a month, obviously they're going to be ecstatic. But nevertheless, those property managers can be as valuable as the real estate agent involved if you play your cards right. But like you said, you want to be pulled in. You want somebody that wants to lead with the value of, hey, I know what I'm talking about. And so again, it's the same scenario when we start talking about, multifamily, big multifamily projects and funds and so on and so forth. So now you transitioned, you said about a year ago into real estate sales. What made you, and again, my listeners know that that's my background. I'm real estate sales, but so I'm always open to talk about that, but what drew you into saying, hey, this could potentially be a profession that I want to pursue?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely something that I've been interested in for a while. I'm very lucky to be on a team. So I'm on the Papasan Properties team here in Austin, Texas.
Hmm.
So
Austin.
Austin, Texas. Yes, that's right.
I hear the fire from here. It's hot. It's hot in Austin.
Yes. Yep. About 40% appreciation last year.
Jeez almighty. I
Yeah.
remember when I was a kid, Austin was just, I mean, it was always the capital, but I mean, it wasn't the hot, hip, new place to move to. But now it's like, golly, people can't get to that desert fast enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. Our first property, so my husband's from Austin, so all of his family's here.
sure.
We bought our first property here almost 9 years ago, and we bought it for 180,000, and it's now worth 480,000, and it's great. It's a
They
gem.
probably could get multiple offers at that, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. We're definitely in a multiple offer situation market for sure.
Yeah, and that's so from a sales standpoint, how many multiple offer situations have you dealt with very many of those in your first year?
Yes, yes, I have. I probably have, oh, dozens that I've made offers on that are multiple offer situations, and I have investors, so they're happy to go ahead and make offers on like three different houses in the same weekend,
Yep,
and
yep,
we whichever one executes, we drop the other two offers really fast.
yep,
But about half of my properties that I get are actually off market.
yeah.
So I
Well,
know
that's
it's
that's what
difficult to
I
say,
experienced.
but
And
I'm bird dogging like anything,
yep,
and the off market is just really really great for my investor clients. They love
yep.
it.
I experienced that 2021. The off market stuff was just that's where it's at, and that's what one of the things that when we vet a property operator or a sponsor manager, whatever it is of a fund or of a specific property, hunting for off market stuff is something that's it's kind of a specialty, I guess, because not everybody can just pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Hey, you want to sell your house?" And they have no, and we've had some people say yes, we've had some people say slam the phone down and say things that are, you don't want to hear. And so, but the off market stuff, commercially and investor wise, is so hot right now down there. But at the same time,
Mhm.
that's got to even step the challenge. That's like another two or three rungs up the challenge ladder. It's one thing to deal with a homeowner because, hey, maybe they're moving for a job, maybe they're moving for this, maybe they're moving for that. But when you start dealing with investment properties, those people are like, yeah, I can cash out right now, and now you've got to take a guy that wants a deal against a lady that wants to cash out, and now all of a sudden you're like, ooh, you kind of get caught between two bulls real quick. But so what's your off market strategy? You just obviously you don't have to tell any proprietary information, but do you just pick up the phone and just start calling?
Uh, well, actually, I wrote an article in Silicon Valley Investor Club about this very topic last month. So I'm glad you asked. So
Yeah,
I send out letters to people who are looking for those sorts of things. I also network really well with, once again, I mean, a real estate agent's network is everything. So
sure.
I
Sure.
network,
Well, here you are doing this podcast to real estate syndicators and investors, and the thing is that you could just about put anything together, honestly, if you're doing things like this, because there's not agents doing this stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. I had a property today that a client made an offer on, and it's off market. It has two other offers on it as well. So, I mean, just because it's off market doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk. It's just
Yes,
there's distressed sellers in every market.
there
There are.
is.
There are people who just need to sell the house because,
It's just the difference in the markets is the amount of distressed sellers, whether you have a bunch or very few, and when it's
right,
very few, it can be difficult. But so,
right.
what your strategy is? You send letters and you just network and maybe get referrals and things like that.
Yes. And then, of course, other investors. So, some investors who are selling, um, if you're selling in a 1031, timing
Yep,
is everything for you.
yep.
Like, you definitely want to make your money back, but if you can sell to a buyer who's going to be really flexible for you on a closing date,
Hmm.
that's worth a lot of money and saves taxes. So, other investors as well, trying to do a buyer seller matchup.
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
And you just try to put the yeah. You try to you try to just find the square peg for the square hole and or round peg for the round hole and put it and get it put together. So yeah, well that's I
absolutely.
mean that's awesome and then it's great to so you wrote a article for the Silicon you said the Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley Investor Club. Yes. And it's how
Man,
to
that's
find
awesome.
off market properties. Yep.
Wow. Well,
So
you
perfect,
know,
perfect time to have that question.
those guys have some money to invest, and you definitely could take the venture capital angle on because
Mhm.
even venture capitalists want something solid on the solid ground such as real estate. So
Mhm.
it's always fun to see different strategies, especially play out from the real estate agent's standpoint yourself of saying, hey, I'm out working and doing these things for my investors. With that, we're kind of pushing up against our 30-minute timeline. I'd like to get a little information on maybe how, if there's investors out there that are potentially looking at stepping into the Austin market or potentially thinking about saying, hey, I want to make a move to a Texas town that used to be a desert. How would somebody go about getting a hold of you?
Excellent. I am with the Papasan Properties Group with Keller Williams.
Okay.
My email address is Megan, Megan, at Papasan Properties. That's PAPA, as in Papa Alpha, SANPROPERTIES.com. You can also get through to me on our website at Papasan Properties Group. Um, and I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn at Megan
Sure.
Flake. Um,
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
Megan, I know with as much stuff as you've got going on down there, and I'll tell you, if there's any real estate agents listening today, take note here on she's been in the business a year, guys. She's been in the business 1 year. Sell in the sales business. She's been in the real estate investing business forever. So she knows the terms, she knows the lingo, she knows how to haggle, how to talk, how to make that. But making those connections, and it's exactly what she said. Your network is everything. I even forget who says your network is your net worth, and I've heard that probably exactly 1 million times. Your network is your net worth, and there she is, so just like that right there. She's on this podcast. She's making waves when everybody else is kind of sitting around wondering and trying to figure it out. So Megan, congratulations. I mean, I'm glad to hear you're doing great with the sales business. I hope the investment business continues to pay dividends as well. And good luck to you all in the future. And I can't thank you enough for taking I know it's only 30 minutes, but I know in that business 30 minutes can mean the difference in a sale and no sale. So thank you so much for your time.
thank you, Casey. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. I hope you have a good rest of the day. And to the Cash Flow Pro podcast listeners and channel watchers, we appreciate you sticking with us today, and we hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. Cash Flow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.